Organisation, and good to see you again, Dr. Jennifer Donovan. Dr. Donovan, would you like to make a short opening statement?
Yes, and I promise to keep it short. In previous appearances, I've reflected on the work AERO has done in its short existence and the impact AERO has had on extending evidence-based practice in education in Australia. So today I take the chance to update the committee on AERO's proposed work plan for 2025 and give you an overview of what new research, resources and analysis I will be able to tell you about in future appearances. The education ministers across the country through their senior officers have agreed on 3 priorities to focus on in our research in 2025, namely First Nations, equity and disability and inclusion. Accordingly, AERO will begin to identify and document approaches that are successfully supporting First Nations students to achieve their education goals, drawing out common features that can inform policy and program development. AERO will research how inequity, particularly concentrations of socioeconomic disadvantage, impacts outcomes, opportunities and experiences in education. We will investigate the school and system levers that hold the greatest promise for strengthening equity in Australian education, and we will explore education outcomes of children with disability and gather evidence for effective inclusive practices for those students. Some of the work we will be doing this year is a continuation and expansion of work begun in previous years. We are continuing our work on the implementation of evidence-based practices in early childhood education and care and schools, examining intentional teaching and assessment practices. We're also refreshing a program of work drawing on early childhood data to provide insights to policymakers on complex questions such as the impact of quality education and care on children with vulnerability, patterns of participation in ECEC, including children with disability, and analysis of the characteristics that predict workforce retention in early childhood education and care. As I have assured the committee before, there is clear, robust and extensive evidence base on the teaching practices that best support all students to learn. AERO has brought these practices together in its learning and teaching model. We will expand the suite of resources that assist teachers and school leaders to implement these practices and continue to support the efforts of systems to implement these practices across the country. So thank you for this chance to preview the year ahead.
Good, thanks very much. Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you very much. So just in relation to your 2025 work plan, have you got a copy of that? Can we get that?
I don't have a copy of it available to share at the moment. It's with the ministers for their final endorsement. As soon as we receive that, it'll be published on our website and I'll provide it to you.
Okay. Has there been any delays at all or is this consistent with the normal time frame?
This is slightly later
noting it's
than
end
previous.
Of February already?
Yeah, that's true. This is a little bit later than previously. The senior officials of all of the departments offered to have greater input into the way the research priorities were scoped, and so we took some time in January. We ran 3 workshops with the jurisdictions and stakeholders, and we took that time to make sure that the research agenda that ministers are in the process of now approving is consistent with the important questions and relevant to everybody's work.
And have there been any specific directions or instructions that have come out of the Education Ministers' meetings? No,
other than to highlight the priorities. The ministers, according to our constitution, don't give specific direction or instruction to AERO. They want us to be able to operate with independence so that the research can be regarded as having credibility and integrity. So they set the priorities and they invite and we invite the jurisdictions to share with us what are the relative important questions, what is the relevant work that might be happening in their jurisdictions currently, so we can take that into account.
How do you decide on the 3 priorities that you've come to?
It comes from the ministers. I talk with the ministers and their heads of departments for this purpose, but at least annually, to get a sense of what are the relative priorities across the country. I bring them then to the senior officers meeting in the first instance to say, here's a long list of things that people are really interested in. Help me prioritise the ones that we'll be able to accommodate in our work plan for this year. That happened, I think, in August of last year, and there's been a process then to refine the questions ready for the work plan to be sent round to ministers.
And so then in terms of shortlisting it and reducing it down to the 3 that you've chosen, what goes into the decision to do that?
We prepare a paper for the senior officers to consider that says there are, of this long list, there are some that have really a lot of backing. There's a lot of commonality across the jurisdictions to say these are important. Then there might be a shorter list provided to them for their consideration. We will give them any advice about work that is currently in place that could form the foundation for future work, the directions that it could take, and it's a conversation among them, representing their ministers, about what should be finally identified as the priorities for the work we do.
Can you provide us a list? Can you provide us that paper that goes into informing it?
I honestly don't know. Can I check with the Deputy Secretary? I'd suggest you take that on notice. Take it on notice.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
What work is Aero currently undertaking of its own initiative?
All of the work we do is work that has been authorised by the Minister's priority setting. Okay. So I mentioned in my opening remarks that...
Have you got the autonomy to be able to select your own?
We don't select our own so much as under the umbrella of a priority like embedding effective practices, we would then pursue research into aspects of effective practices in early childhood or teaching settings. So, as I said, the ministers don't give direction as to how we go about it, what questions do we ask. They give us those high-level priorities, and then we have quite a bit of flexibility then to identify the way we carry out that work. And some of it has been of such importance that it's carried over years. We have an annual research agenda, but some of the work on that research agenda is work that has been begun in previous years and will carry forward because it's important and there's much to do. Okay.
Can you provide us with data on the usage of your resources? As in, are you fully utilising the resources you provided with? What sort of data can you provide us on that?
I can share, I'll take it on notice, but I can provide information like hits on websites, downloads, that kind of thing. I'd caution though, because I don't know that that necessarily gives a full picture of the extent of the use of the resources and the research that we're making available.
Is that because there might be one user that actually accesses it and then it's distributed? Exactly.
The other thing...
In multiple ways, yeah.
That's right. The other thing that we are aware of is in some jurisdictions the system has decided this is great, we're going to take it, we're going to package it up and distribute it and make sure all of our teachers have it in their hot little hands, or they have a version of it that is, marked as being done by Aero, but in collaboration with their jurisdiction. So there are various ways that our work gets disseminated, not all of which will be visible through website hits.
Do you see having that feedback has been a vital way to measure the effectiveness of the work you're doing? And that uptake of your resources could indicate any number of things, couldn't it?
Yes, it is difficult.
So is it something you can give consideration to, how you could better track that?
Yes.
Other than just website hits?
And we are at the moment. We've developed an outcomes and impact measurement plan, which is trying to get beyond, if we want to be confident about this work having impact, what are the ways that we can go about understanding better how it's being used in jurisdictions, in systems and sectors, etc. So we have a program of work that we're initiating this year which will go to trying to answer some of those questions. It's never going to be so simple as Aero did a piece of research and now Australia's top of the PISA rankings. There's so much that happens between what we do and the outcomes for students.
Let's get there though.
But, but we're trying. But we think we have some ways that we can go about being able to report more clearly about the kind of extent of awareness of the material, the teachers' attitudes towards it, the number of jurisdictions that are choosing to disseminate it widely, etc.
Okay. How many publications has Aero produced, or how many in 2024?
That is
you can take that on notice if you
excellent question. I will take it on notice. I do have it here, but I don't want to rifle through all the papers. I can probably give it to you at the end of my remarks.
Yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, if we can get it today, that'd be good. And your current staffing profile?
We have a staffing profile of around 140 FTE at the moment. This is more staffing than we would ordinarily have. We are calibrating the staffing profile over the longer term to make sure that we can afford the people. We know how much our core funding will be, and what we've had the luxury of this year is a bit of an underspend from previous years. So in this year we have more people than we expect to have in the future.
So you've got a bit of a surge.
Which
capacity.
means, exactly, we're trying to deliver a lot of material and activity over the course of this year with more people available to us to do that, but we will be scaling back the staffing profile after mid-2026.
Thank you. I always enjoy our chats. Chair, I think Senator Henderson.
Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Dr Donovan, great to see you again. Thank you very much for your attendance, and can I say congratulations on the outstanding work that you are doing, which is all about driving evidence-based teaching into classrooms and supporting teachers with the very best materials and education research. I want to ask you about your report last year on a knowledge-rich approach to curriculum design. Can I ask what your key findings were from that report?
The report that we published last year was one that was commissioned by the New South Wales Education Standards Authority, and it provided an overview of the evidence regarding a knowledge-rich curriculum. It explains that knowledge-rich curriculum is a common feature of educationally high-performing countries, that knowledge-rich curriculum provides the foundation for excellence and equity in the education system by prioritising and explicitly outlining the essential knowledge and related skills that students should be taught and develop at each stage of their schooling.
And when you look at a knowledge-rich curriculum, could you just explain what that means and where the Australian curriculum is not consistent with the principles of a knowledge-rich curriculum?
I'd preface that by saying Aero hasn't done analysis of the Australian curriculum. Others have, but we have not. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you the features of a knowledge-rich curriculum is that it aligns with the science about how students learn. So we often talk about explicit teaching practice. By that we mean teachers can break down the knowledge and the new concepts that we want students to learn in ways that they are manageable, that they can be related to previous learning. They're sequenced carefully so that the new knowledge gets built on a foundation that's related and relevant. It's assessed routinely and regularly, and it's designed for students' mastery. Teachers can be very confident that the students have learned what they've been taught. A knowledge-rich curriculum provides that kind of content for teachers. It leaves them in no doubt as to what is core that they need to be teaching, what is the sequence for it, the approach to it, and the assessments that will demonstrate the students have learned.
And did you do an assessment of other countries with a knowledge-rich curriculum?
We have begun to look at that. We haven't completed that piece of work at the moment. We are interested in that. For the NESA report, we did note that high-performing countries have knowledge-rich curriculum. We've begun a piece of work looking at those high-performing countries and the characteristics of their curriculum, which is still in progress.
And can you provide a bit more detail about that? What other countries are you looking at, and which countries in particular would you regard as being high-performing with a knowledge-rich curriculum?
There are two that have been of particular interest to us. The UK is one. There's been quite a lot of change to their curriculum in order to make it a knowledge-rich curriculum in the last decade, really. It's been a long process. The other one we looked at was Portugal because, harking back to my reference to PISA results earlier, Portugal showed a very interesting and dramatic improvement, and it was strongly correlated to a shift to knowledge-rich curriculum in Portugal at the time. Now, since then, the Portuguese department has shifted away from knowledge-rich curriculum, and the PISA results no longer look quite as good as they did. But it was enough to pique our interest about, okay, there's a relationship here. So we have been looking closely at theirs as well.
Are you able to provide on notice some of your work that you're currently undertaking, including your analysis of the Portuguese and UK curricula?
Yes, I can take on notice. I can safely agree to provide the outline of the work that we undertook. The analysis itself is not in a stage that it's ready to be shared yet, but I'm very happy to let you know as soon as it is.
All right, well, look, to the extent that you've got information or documents that you hold that have provide an overview of the work that you've done to date, that would be very much appreciated. When are you due to report on this latest piece of work?
We have not locked in a time frame for this. It's not been one of our top priorities, so it's been work that's been undertaken over a period of time, but at a fairly low level of resourcing. I would anticipate it would be finalised by the end of this year.
And, sorry, who commissioned this current piece of work?
This is a piece of work that we undertook to do in order to inform the work that we've done for ministers about effective teaching practice. One aspect of effective teaching practice is what you're working with. What is it that you're teaching? What is the enacted curriculum that the teachers need to be delivering and ensuring they're learning? So we took a path into knowledge-based curriculum. The NESA piece of work that we did gave us the opportunity to see there was a line of inquiry that was worth following. Sometimes with research, you do not know what the end is going to be when you start out. You begin investigating a question and you let the question and the answers to that question take you to the next step. So where we are at the moment came from what is it that teachers need to be able to do, and has taken us to they need to know how to deliver a curriculum. A curriculum can be designed in a way that enables them to be very effective practitioners.
And are you able to draw any conclusions between a knowledge-rich curriculum and the current Australian curriculum, which is not, by definition, knowledge-rich?
As I said, we haven't done any analysis of the Australian curriculum in its current form.
You can't draw any parallels or make any observations about the difference between a knowledge-rich curriculum and the current Australian curriculum?
Look, I would say that the CEO of ACARA is really interested in the work that we're doing, and that I am keeping him in the loop on what our plans are and the design of the work that we're doing. I would also observe that NESA has commissioned this piece of work from us because they were interested in going a bit further with their own state-based syllabuses towards making them more useful for teachers in terms of the amount of direction they contain.
So just to be clear, a knowledge-rich curriculum essentially outlines the achievement standards or the various learning outcomes for each subject and each year level. So Year 7 maths, this is what we would be anticipating to teach students in that given year. Can you just elaborate a bit more on what it means in practice? So, for instance, the Australian curriculum has the 8 subject or learning areas, then it has the 7 general capabilities and the 3 cross-curriculum priorities. So by a knowledge-rich curriculum, that means that it just sets out essentially each learning area for each subject in each year level. Is that correct?
Yes, it gives a very clear sense of what is the core knowledge that needs to be learned over the period of time available to the teacher. And it also gives advice about assessment. How do you know that that learning has happened? So rather than outcomes that can be quite high level, they're very definitive. The students will be able to do this. They will be able to demonstrate this. So it gives a bit more clarity to teachers to understand what it is that needs to be addressed in what sequence, over what period of time, and to what and how their achievement will be demonstrated.
So is Aero advocating for a knowledge-rich curriculum based on your findings?
Yes.
And just can you explain the basis why you are advocating for a knowledge-rich curriculum?
As I said, it's because a knowledge-rich curriculum takes into account the way we know students learn. So the more precisely the curriculum can outline for teachers the work that they need to do, then the more likely a successful learning outcome. So if the curriculum can help the teachers by breaking down, by chunking down the new knowledge, the concepts, by being very clear about the sequence, by offering insight into the assessments that could be used, then the teacher's task is made clearer and straightforward, and it matches the practice that we know will be most effective.
And that leads to higher levels of student achievement based on your research?
Better learning.
That's what it's all about, isn't it, Dr. Donovan?
That is what it's all about. It's the learning.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I have no further questions.
A quick follow-up, you're more than welcome.
Yeah,
Senator
just in relation
Sullivan.
to the research and looking at those other countries, the UK and Portugal, did you examine the impact on teacher workload and any change in any difference in the workload of teachers that are applying knowledge-rich?
I'll have to take that on notice. We certainly looked at the impact.
I've had some pushback that, sorry to cut you off, but I've had some pushback when these matters are discussed, people saying, oh, it's putting the burden on teachers.
Yes, but in both cases, what is evident is the amount of professional learning that was provided. So there was space and time and resourcing made available to make sure that the teachers knew what the changes were about.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Chair.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Donovan. Thanks for joining us. It's always a pleasure hearing your views and the evidence you give the committee. So have a really good afternoon.
Thank you.